Welcome to another edition of Man to Man, a wellness series where we chop it up with other brothers to get their insight on how to go from hellness to wellness. I'm David Wazicki, your favorite certified transformational nutrition coach, and today we are back again with another great brother to talk to. He's a licensed mental health professional, Tedx speaker. He's I just messed this up. Sorry, Crystal. I gotta start from the top again. I'm sorry.
Nah, it's a lot, man.
What just happened? Hold on. Something there. Oh, there was something that got deleted. I'm sorry about that, James.
Nah, you good, bro.
This beautiful intro with all the things on you, and it, I think I must have deleted it by accident. Um, One second. Okay. I'm going to try again. James, I apologize. That's a first.
Nah,
I
man, you good. You
was
good.
like, what? Okay. Let's do it again. All right. What's up, fam? Welcome to another edition of Man to Man, a wellness series where we chop it up with other brothers to get their insight on how to go from hellness to wellness. I'm David Wazicki, your favorite certified transformational nutrition coach, and today we are back again with another great brother who is a licensed mental health professional, TEDx speaker, husband, father, veteran, and so much more. We're going to get into all of that, but first, let's give it up for the James Harris. What's up, James?
Man, that was a heck of a welcome, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Little bit of a mouthful, but we get it done here.
Yeah, nah,
Um,
definitely.
so I want to jump in with the question we ask everybody around these parts,
Okay.
and that's to get you man to man blue check certified. Are you ready for the question?
Ready for the question.
James, what does masculinity mean to you?
So that's a good question, but it's also an ironic one. I'm not one of those people who believe that masculinity is specifically for men or males. I
Mm,
definitely think that it's a social construct that people can implement wherever they are within the spectrum of their lives. And what I mean by that is, I view the areas of masculinity and femininity to like qualities and skills, and just so everybody can be in tune with them, not specifically based on genitalia, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think a man
absolutely.
is weak or a woman is more dominant if they display characteristics that overlap to both of them, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. So to me, it's no specific criteria of what masculinity is supposed to be. I don't subscribe to that notion.
I love that. I love that. That's a first. Again, no two men have yet to answer this question the same way twice. So I appreciate you for that, and definitely certified on that note. Um, there's a lot again where I can get started, but I think it's good to start from the beginning of your journey and just really understand. I mean, to have that thought process of where you're at now, just on describing masculinity, and to go back to your early days where essentially you ended up in the Virginia foster care system. um I mean, I'm blown away. I'd love to understand what that was like for you. um yeah, if you could just speak on that, like how did you end up in that scenario, and what was that like?
Oh yeah, yeah. So the foster care situation. So I think when people think ward of the state or foster care and group homes, which I was, in all of those things, it was
Yeah.
it probably got a negative deconnotation to them just based on what you see in movies and stuff like that. But for my situation and many other situations, was an unfortunate one. My dad died when I was 5. My
Mm.
mom got sick with epilepsy and strokes when I was about 10.
Wow.
So for the longest time, of course, like I'm the oldest of three. I got a younger brother and a younger sister. But for the
Okay.
longest time, we were doing everything we could within the home to sustain it. Although she was having strokes and epilepsy, seizures and stuff, it wasn't as a big deal. But I think
Mm.
one day that drew the red flag to Department of Social Services was she had a stroke and she was unresponsive. And this was one of the days that the nurse had left or didn't come in or something like that. So of course, having to call the ambulance at 10 years old, they respond, and they viewed it as, hey, if this happened again, like, you're 10, you're not able to take, so it was one of
Yeah.
those situations
Yeah.
to where they had to remove us from the home, unfortunately, due to mom not being able to the randomness of seizures basically and strokes. So which it was understandable, but it was a tough situation. So my brother and sister and I wound up going to a foster home. It was a good situation for a while. So from 10 to maybe 12 to 13, we were in this, foster home, other kids, married couple. But then some things transpired there to where everybody in the home had to uh, leave just due to some things that occurred with the foster family.
Mm.
So from that situation, they split my brother and sister and I up, and we had to go to group homes separately. And that was more unfortunate than any situation because now I'm not able to be that provider, that protector for my younger siblings. My brother's a year younger, my sister's 2 years younger. Um, so that was the most challenging time overall. And from there, I just viewed it as a situation to where I have to not only endure this circumstance now, but be better than that circumstance later. So
Sure.
when I was 16, I emancipated myself, became a legal adult, and just made it work. And today, I'm fortunate to be in a position to where now I assist Department of Social Services to have better independent living programs, have better systems to where children are not aging out of foster care and having a lack of resources. And of course, I have a private practice. I have a community-based center to where I'm providing additional resources to people within that need them. So some of the services I provide include is first-time home buying, restoration of rights, voter registration, LGBTQ seminars for those who need them.
Mm.
Because oftentimes, too, those people of that LGBTQ population are displaced or kicked out of their homes just due to their choice, parents not being able to accept it or relatives not being able to accept it. So I educate
Right.
the population on that. Um, Pre-COVID was feeding the less fortunate every third Saturday, but now here in Virginia, you can't do that no more. It's like stuff got to
Why?
be pre-packaged and
Oh.
all kinds of stuff because of the COVID situation.
Okay.
Um, so I also do outpatient, and of course, I founded the movement Men to Heal to get men back focused on the overall wellness, not mental health, physical health, and now emotional health. And all of this tied into my journey of when you're in the system. I don't know how it is in your state, but when you're in the system, you got to do therapy weekly.
Mm.
So for me, it wasn't a pleasant experience. It felt like a check in the box, opposed to a situation of let's ensure that we're processing what's going on. You were just removed from your family.
Yeah.
Could have been trauma, it could have been anything, but I just felt the situation was disingenuous, and the therapists within that process were older white people or
Mm.
just non-relatable people.
Yeah.
So that's opposed to giving up on therapy like a lot of people would have or have done. I decided to change it. So anyway, when I emancipated myself at 16, I experienced, house hop hotels and stuff like that. Wound up graduating from high school, got selected, or um, what do you call it? So 7 colleges. I was, able to choose from 7 different colleges. So the one I did pick was St. Paul's College, and this was in nothing there but just land and one male dorm, one woman dorm, so
Wow.
no distractions. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
chose that for that purpose because I
Mm,
know I had a bigger mission. Um, but life happens. So being that
sure.
I didn't have a residence, um, so on winter break, summer break, spring break, and stuff like that, what I would do is sneak back in the dorm because my dorm was on the first floor, because I ain't had nowhere else to go. Everybody
Sure.
else going home for those breaks. So I was fortunate. I had a car and I kept the microwave, a foaming grill, and my clothes in my car. So when people left for those breaks, I just moved back in. And sophomore year, though, I decided I didn't want to do that no more. It has to be more to life. So that's
Mm,
when I joined the Army. Um, so I did 8 years, 2 deployments, one Iraq, one Afghanistan.
wow.
Knew I was different. I wanted to be better for my family, for the people I encounter. So I tried therapy again. And this time it was a similar experience. It wasn't as
Mm,
pleasurable. So and that's one of the unfortunate reasons too why a lot of veterans tend to not go to therapy, or they'll prefer to go to groups because oftentimes the therapists are disconnected and or don't have experience to treat veterans, or just no knowledge. It feels like you're teaching from a book, the DSM.
right. Yeah, yeah. Yep.
So again I found myself like, oh man, this is something that you have to do. So I was able to be in that position to check all boxes. So wound up going back to college, got my degree in clinical psychology. Then I got a master's in clinical mental health counseling, and then I got licensed, of course, by the state of Virginia. And the boxes I'm talking about checking is, of course, working with those people in the urban areas who identify as, just not having adequate resources or lack thereof of resources. I
Hmm.
often I look like the population I'm serving, the men, the veterans, just a wealth of knowledge and experience. So it's not just me speaking from case studies I did and or the DSM. It's
Right.
more of a collection of just being eclectic with life experience as well as the knowledge and insight from the educational process.
Mm. So there's a lot here to unpack. I'm going to rewind because I
Do
need to
your
get
thing.
to your emancipation at 16
Okay.
and that realization. But first, just for listeners and viewers, the DSM is basically the Bible of when it comes to mental health and diseases and disorders. Um, so that's what he's been referencing. I've referenced it a few times in the past as well. Your emancipation at 16, where did that thinking even come into play where you said at 16 years old, I'm going to emancipate myself? And you also mentioned knowing you were destined for something greater. When did these two things, like, when did that switch go for you?
Yeah, so being in a group home, or
Mm-hmm.
being in the system at that point for, um, let me see, so from 10 to 16, I just seen a lot of things, I heard a lot of things, interacted with different staff members, and I realized, just from talking to people who were in the group home setting before me, like let's say um, somebody was 17 turning 18, they'll age out. And you keep in contact with them. Hey, what's going on? Nothing, man. Just trying to find a job. Where you living at? I don't know, man. I'm looking. So for
Mm,
me, it was more so like, dang, the system just you turn 18, then tomorrow you're done.
that's it. Yeah.
And so this is how it was during that time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 37 now, so over 20 years ago. And like I said, I work with Department of Social Services now as a consultant in different areas to make independent living a thing and to make or college a thing or trade school, all that stuff. But back then it was more so of me just having insight like,
Mm,
oh man. So at 16, I sat on the edge of the bed and just was pondering. Then I realized, like, one of my favorite quotes to this day, something I told myself, like, if they can feed you, they can starve you. So I viewed that
wow.
in not only from a nutritional standpoint, but from a standpoint of life. Like, They got all the control. In 2 years, I'm gonna just try, I'm gonna be starving. Basically, I'm gonna have to figure it out. So I was like, nah, I'm gonna try to get on it now. So what I did some research, contacted my social worker, and she said, yeah, you can do that, but the odds wouldn't be favorable because of XYZ. I'm like, listen, in 2 years, it's gonna happen anyway. I'd much rather try to do it now, that I got control over it, and I can start making my own way without the rules and regulations of this group home I'm in. I
Yeah.
feel that I'd be more easier and convenient by doing it on myself and navigating it. So she agreed. I don't know if she brought me the paperwork or I met her at her office and then I just did it. But I was firm in my decision. I was gonna do it anyway. No way I was gonna wait till 18 and
Sure.
the next day be done. So yeah, after that, man, I gave the paperwork to, of course, my school, which was a high school, because at that point I'm my own adult. So
That's right.
all the permission slips and the go on trips and all that I'm signing. So it just was weird for the teachers who weren't familiar with the process. So that was a humorous time, just messing with my teachers, like, oh yeah, nah, I'll be there, or I'm not coming tomorrow. The PTA, you could just tell me my grades now, type situation. So it was fun back then. I keep in contact with some of my teachers now. We laugh about it. Um, and they still teach, and or they retired, they still got relationships. So I go back and speak to their students if they still in there. But yeah, it just was a fun time. So I viewed that as me being independent. So I was just
Mm.
fortunate to have a couple of friends who moms and parents were cool enough to say, nah, you good, man, you can stay here tonight, or hey, we got an extra, you can sleep in my son room, or whatever the case is. So that happened up until I went to college, and then I just told you what happened when I went to college. I was still homeless or whatever, but of course, I was fortunate because it was one dorm room,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe what 20 rooms, 3 floors, and mine was that first one right by the steps. I was fortunate, so I was able to sneak back in. So yeah, and to be honest with you, if I didn't go to the army, I may have still done that, or got a job or something. But I viewed the
Mm.
military as, what, I can eat, I can earn money, and I can have benefits to later get my education. So that's why I chose the military opposed to just finishing school and then figure it out. It was more of a thing that I can do simultaneously. And
Got it.
being that the military was one of those things that was providing income, I was able to then send money back home to my younger brother and sister. Although, like, when you're in the system, the state is supposed to give you funding, but oftentimes you rarely see
Y-
that funding because, of course,
Exactly.
it goes to the group home or the foster, all that situation. So you
Hmm.
may, get some stuff here and there, but I didn't want my sister and brother to be in that position. So, I sent them money to ensure they had clothes and shoes and money for snacks or trips and stuff like that, um, you know, to make sure that they was good.
I mean, I love how, you know, for me, it's this thing of mindset and effectively taking advantage of the situation that I'm hearing with your journey. I mean, it's a lot. Like that, you continue to articulate these benefits of being in a group home and going to the army, and you were involved in two tours, right? Iraq and Afghanistan as well.
Yeah,
And then you effectively come full circle where now you are, I mean, in a beautiful way and in many ways, giving back to your community. One being that therapist that you didn't have, right, in the army, and and previously, and so you've become that person, and you've been that person to now give back in these different ways. Was it something where you just literally said, I have to be that person, because I didn't see that prior in my life? Or, like, again, another switch, flipping the switch moment? It was it just that simple, or were there other things? Because one thing I'll add is that one can easily say, being in that foster care system, going on two tours, and now being a veteran coming out of that, there's got to be some trauma involved in there, and mixed in there that, it sounds like ultimately you eventually did begin to address, and now as a licensed therapist, you're being able to do that for others. But what was there something as simple as saying, I got to be the one, I got to be that one to to be it for my community? Was it that simple, or were there some other things attached to it?
Yeah, nah. So I wouldn't say it was that simple, but I would say a collection of things made me want to try therapy again.
Mm,
Not only just from the traumatic situations of my upbringing, the group homes and stuff like that, but of course as a veteran, I was a combat veteran. So my two tours were
mm,
outside the wire. The minimum
mm.
time of my mission time was we probably did 14 hours per mission, every other day, outside the wire, and I was a gunner. So I
Wow.
experienced a lot of different combat and a lot of different traumatic situations. So that definitely was a collection of it as well. But the ultimate deciding factor was just viewing others who were in similar situations, and or just people who didn't have an opportunity to go to therapy and see the benefits of what it can do. Because now you continuously to vicariously affect the people around you, whether that's your partner, your children, your coworkers, your fellow veterans, your teammates. Just different people are affected by the impact or the lack of impact that you're willing to do over your own life.
Right.
So just being in a position to want to lead by example, and then of course, yeah, wanting to be that person to service all of those entities in which oftentimes lack the resources to do it. Like how many black male therapists it's not a lot here,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then how many veteran therapists so I spoke on that earlier, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you hear the horror stories of the VA, so
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
just want to be in a position to not only serve my community, but give back to those who oftentimes lack the availability, whether it's being on the bus line or whether it's being at affordable rates or just seeing somebody, that's a man of color.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all of those things to me was a reason to get to where I am, and I still got a long place to go. I want to do so much more, although I'm doing a lot, and I'm gonna continuously do that.
I love it. I love it. And it's, I mean, yeah, there's just a lot of powerful, like these powerful undercurrents of what you're doing and how you're continuing
Yeah.
to expand. And one of the things, Men to Heal, I want to get into in 1 second. Uh, but before that, I want to speak to one of your TED Talks, Don't Wait for the Eulogy.
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
that title in itself is amazing and impactful. And I would just love to know what were your thoughts around that TED Talk.
So the TED Talk itself, they reached out based on my movement, and they allow you to select any topic you want. But for me, being that they reached out based on the movement, because I could have went anywhere with the decision. I could have talked about the tenacity from my upbringing. I could have talked about entrepreneurship, but I figured "Don't Wait Till the Eulogy" was impactful because that's oftentimes what people do and men do when it comes to, again, what my movement stands for: the mental health, the physical health, and overall wellness. So that's how I arrived on that topic. And, just pondering it oftentimes, and I said this within the TED Talk, like somebody a man will have 6 to 8 people carrying his casket, when he dies, but oftentimes don't have 6 to 8 people to tell him, hey, bro, you tripping. Nah, that don't
Wow.
make sense. Or
Yeah.
go to the doctor. Or, hey,
Yeah.
you might need to talk to a therapist.
Yeah.
So don't wait till the eulogy. At the eulogy is where you hear so many great things about this man, you know, and he can't hear none of them now that he's transpired to, transition. But when he was here, people oftentimes don't say, hey, nah, I wouldn't. Oh man, you drinking too much, or that substance is going, or hey, bro, like that's a lot of reckless behavior, or simply you don't seem like yourself, man. You want to talk about it? So that's pretty much where that came from. It's just a collection of things that I discussed within that TEDx, to not only help the man himself identify things within himself, but the people around him. So it's more of an accountability piece, because
Yeah. Yeah.
people are watching somebody uh decrease right now, or like just be reduce to nothing without stepping in, whether it's fear of how they will view it, or just not knowing what to say or how to say it. So that's what that was like. Don't wait till the eulogy. Like,
Yeah.
address it now, hold them accountable now. So that's what that is.
I love it. I love it. I mean, that in itself is impactful. And, it's something I say often, where men suffer in silence. Men suffer in silence, to your point where you said there's 6 to 8 men that will carry the casket, but you don't have 6 to 8 men that are accountable for you. And I think a lot of that has to do with this, what we see in society right now. I feel like there's this big tug of war between, something I started with, the question at the top, this masculinity. And I love your answer to it, because I feel, on the one hand, there are folks where vulnerability, and that's the heart of this podcast, and the work you're doing, apparently, and that allows for getting that support, asking for that support, creating a community. I mean, community is, more than one person. So even if it were just one more person to come on board with you, you have yourself a little community of support and a foundation, right? But then there are other folks that still will stick to these old paradigms of, yeah, that masculinity trope, and unfortunately taking masculinity out of the context of how you define it. That's similar to how I see it. I feel you have masculine and feminine energy in all beings, however you define yourself, right? And it's how you tap into it. But then again, you have folks who still stay with this old, outdated, in my opinion, outdated way of looking at it, where it's still not allowing a lot of men. And I strongly, just on the data I see, that, in particular melanated communities, where it's still tough. It's still this thing. Like, you can see it in certain mainstream conversations where it's, the conversation's turning. But when you come into these melanated communities and you have the talks, you still hear it. It still comes out, and it's still something that's tough to just overcome. How are you? I'll transition a little bit to your Men to Heal platform. How do you face that with your platform? Is it something that you confront often, or have you seen those changes where people, men are starting to kind of shift?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, I think I'm in a good position, to be honest with you. So Men to Heal has afforded me to speak all over the world. I do
Hmm,
different conferences, I do different educational sessions, retreats. So I've been fortunate.
love it.
I just got back this year. I was speaking in Dominican Republic. Last year, I spoke at St. Lucia. A year before that, Germany. So it's different outlets, different people all over the world. Uh, deal with some form of masculine vulnerability lackness, so
Hmm,
whether that's ego, machismo, or whatever
hmm,
other um, synonymous terms you want to use, but it
yeah.
happens all over the world. It's not just a uh, thing here domestically, so
Right.
that's why I've been
Right.
fortunate that people are reaching out. But how I address it, and with Men to Heal, is of course confronting, educating, and allowing men to see something different. So you got to figure, like, a lot of these things are taught or either shown to where people are just agreeing with it. So one of the things I do too is, because I understand and I'm licensed and I have the education, just educate a lot of people on different diagnoses. You know how many men that I've seen and or talk with that still think depression is for women. They think it's
Hmm,
a woman diagnosis. So
really?
when I educate them on what depression is, or trauma or unresolved grief, then they be like, oh man, I might be depressed. But viewing Hollywood, they will paint this picture as depression as what, this small white girl sitting on the couch eating a tube of ice cream crying.
Right, 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 right.
So that's the perception of what it is. But when you got this group of guys in a room, whether they football players or basketball players, and you know, they were I had this one, he's pro. He said, "Man, I ain't depressed, man. I had 7 tackles the other night. You know what I mean? Who hitting like me?" Um,
Yeah.
and I hear these things, so I'm
Mm,
asking. So I'm educating them on what depression is: lack of interest and pleasure.
mm,
Isolation. Not
yeah.
your appetite, your mood, and all that stuff. So we dive into it. He started to think. He was like, you know what? I haven't been interested in talking to my teammates after the games or reviewing film. I haven't been eating like I normally eat. Normally, I'll be, I eat after the gym or whatever. I haven't been doing the gym. All right, cool. So another symptom. So I'm
Yeah.
like, how you sleeping? When was the last time you got a full night's sleep before practice or after practice or whatever the case is? Man, I try to go to sleep, but I toss and turn throughout the night. Like I
Mm,
got a lot on my mind. Another
mm,
symptom. So it just continues to roll on when I normalize the conversation. I'm like, bro, that's depression. There's nothing wrong with it. Now that we know what
right.
it is, we can, so, but that's the education piece of it. Is what I mean. So it's a
Yep.
lot of men who aren't educated, even a lot of women who aren't educated on it to supply that information to the males within our lives. So, that's part of the issue. Once we can normalize these things and take the stigma away from them, more people, specifically men, will understand, like, I'm tripping. I haven't been myself lately, or I haven't been doing what I normally do, or interacting who I normally interact with, or dang, my appetite has decreased or not been there. And I have been having difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, and just so many things, loss of interest and pleasure, or the thought of suicide did enter my mind because I feel
Yeah.
so alone, or whatever the
Yeah.
case is. So again, that education piece, and just being the example of displaying vulnerability to make it as a tool, because it's not a weakness. Like, it's something that you should definitely share and have. And being in tune with your emotions does not equate to weakness or soft. So just educating that process, and I don't educate just only men. I educate the women as well, because they contribute to the notion of what you asked earlier, that vulnerability piece. I mean,
Yeah.
the masculinity piece.
The-
So it's a handful of women who would say things or post things or tell another man what masculinity should be, or what he has to display as far as masculinity to be in her space.
mhm,
So, and that can be
mhm.
detrimental as well, because now he's trying to achieve or aspire to be what he thinks women want, or this particular woman want. And so when I educate women, I do it in several ways. So um, it was this one instance. I was Christmas shopping for my daughter, right? So
Mhm.
I'm in the store, I'm on this aisle. I raise my girls to be gender neutral. Like, I'm not, pink is not for girls, blue is not for boys. It's whatever you're comfortable with. So anyway, I'm looking for toys or whatever the case, and this little boy and his mom was in the same aisle, and the little
Uh-huh.
boy said, he said, "Ooh, mom, bacon! I want the easy bake oven." And she was like, "Nah, boys don't do no." She was like, "Boys don't get easy bake ovens, or boys don't bake," or something to that effect. So of course I'm like, oh man, he's gonna grow up. He's gonna have to cook. That's a life
Yeah.
skill. That's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily a gender thing. So anyway, I just mind my business. Just out of it. So fast forward later, they didn't have the items. It was limited items on what I wanted, and apparently what this lady wanted. So 2 weeks later had passed. Ironically, I'm back at customer service at this spot, and it looks like the same lady, but this time she's not with a kid. She's with an older male.
Mm,
So I'm walking, I'm minding my business. I'm waiting on customer service to tell me my stuff is ready or whatever the case is. So the guy that she's with, this lady that I think was the same lady from 2 weeks ago, he hit her with, hey babe, what do you want for dinner tonight? Her response was, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna cook anyway. We can stop somewhere on the way home. So for me, I paused, I looked back, and I was like, oh man, if that's her, just imagine the cycle that's going to be repeated when she told her son that
Right.
men don't bake anyway. So if that's
Right.
your notion, if you can identify that now that you're with this person who's your partner who's not cooking, just think about your son and how that reputation will probably get there. Because oftentimes that's what it is. They're told at a younger age that boys don't do that or boys shouldn't cry. So when they grow up, those things are shielded. So it just to me was ironic that she'll tell her son that he can't bake, but or cook or whatever the case is. But now you're dating somebody and you're saying that he's not gonna bake or cook anyway. So that it just
Right.
was ironic. But so that's what I mean by women do it as well. And there's so many other instances. But as a collective, I think we should be educated. But to answer your question, back to Minda Hill. So the speaking engagements, and then I published a book, Man, Just Express Yourself.
Hmm.
And I published that because it's an interactive planner guide for boys and men to better express themselves. One of the issues is people think men don't express themselves. They do. It's just oftentimes not articulated verbally. Like we see
Right.
that articulation in being promiscuous or reckless behavior or substance use or gaming, everything opposed to saying, I don't feel right,
Right.
or I need to talk to somebody. So it's articulating, it's just not connecting in a way that's oftentimes healthy. Um, so the book, it's over 65 different topics for boys and men,
Hmm.
talking about trauma, grief, abandonment, pride, ego, peer pressure, just so many other different topics. So I give a blurb on it, and then they have the option to write out their answer or draw out their answer.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a phenomenal tool, man, and a lot of people, specifically the older married couples who have history within their relationship, is highlighting. So the wife typically buys the book, highlight a couple areas, give it to her partner, and I encourage them to process it over dinner and date night. So it doesn't feel like a chore to him. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
something to assist you in getting the answers that you wanted. And that's been working, man. I had this one lady, they've been married 45 years. She said, this is the most my husband ever talked about feelings. Mind
Wow.
you, I'm 37.
Yeah.
So to read that review on my Goodreads or Amazon, whichever one of them, just was like astonishing. So I'm happy that people are getting the tool and using it for what it is. And then of course I have a lot of moms, single parents, and or parents with their teenage sons who are in that phase of rebellion or whatever the case. They're doing something similar, and they're able
Mm-hmm.
to talk with the sons and process like, oh man, this is what it is. Um, so I'm just fortunate that that tool has been good. And then of course I also created a board game for
Right.
adults and couples, and that's been a good tool as well to get that interaction back. So the board game is your typical 18 by 18, which is the same size as like a Monopoly board.
Okay.
It comes with two dice, come with pawn pieces, and two different card decks. One card deck is comprised of maybe 50 different date ideas. Sometimes people run low on spontaneity. You want to ensure that that fire and that passion is still there.
Yep.
And then the other card deck comprised of different questions that you should ask throughout your relationship, just to make sure that y'all growing on the same pace, or y'all got the same intentions for each other. And or if you're just meeting somebody, you want to make sure that we can progress. um, so it's questions on intimacy, it's questions on finances, family, social issues.
Mm.
So it's so many different questions that you can touch on throughout, to know like, oh yeah, we thinking the same way, or nah, I'm not really feeling that. And most of the questions have comprised for issues or things that I've done within private practice. So I see a couple and they bring up this issue, so those some of the questions address that. So um I just keep it as authentic as possible. So one of the questions in there, um would you take care of me if I left my job? So this also touch on the masculinity piece, because a lot of traditional women feel like a man is supposed to provide, a man is supposed to have a job. I'm
Yeah.
not taking care of
Yep.
a grown man.
Yep.
So I put that question in there, and that was a real life situation that I encountered when I was doing marriage therapy, marriage counseling for a
Mm.
couple. So this couple, Married 5 years, 3 children. Husband assists wife with getting her bachelor's degree, right? So you go ahead, knock out your degree or whatever the case is. Boom. Fast forward again, 5 years of marriage, 3 kids. He put her through school. Boom. She got a job making close to 70 to 80. He goes to her and say, "All right, hon, I want this chance now. You doing
My turn.
good? Yeah. Can you take care of the house 6 months? Just 6 months. I want to get this HVAC cert. After I get this HVAC cert, I can start my own business, more money than what we got now, blah, blah, blah." Logically, you thinking like, all right, cool. One, it's not 4 years like you just did. Two, hold me down. It's only 6 months. I'm your
Right.
husband.
Right.
Her response, looked him in the eyes. Her response is, I'm not taking care of a grown man.
Mm,
Ignore the 5 years of marriage,
mm.
ignore the 3 kids, ignore the fact that he just paid what $80,000 for her degree,
Yeah.
um, and my 6 months is not compared to your 4 years, give or take. So all of those things just was like, man, like had he known this prior to, he one, they may not have been married, or two, they probably definitely wouldn't have, had other arrangements for her getting her degree. But anyway, just little questions like that. The reason why I created the board game. Um,
That's yeah. I mean, let me let me just say this board game called Cheesy Dates, right? I mean, it sounds like an amazing tool. And very, I mean, very true to life. If it can bring up things like this, and I also heard you actually use questions from this game to propose to your wife. I think you muted James. Sorry.
can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
saying
So
sorry.
yeah, yeah. So it's on my YouTube actually. So one of the things that I do within session for couples who have issues communicating and or may have that fear of asking a question to that partner is called like a fishbowl technique. You come
Hmm.
up with 10 questions, I come up with 10 questions. We put them in this bowl or shoebox or hat or whatever, and we pull them. We ask each other honestly, get the feedback, no judgment, no issues, no attitudes. Um, so yeah, that's how you can increase communication with your partner. But what I did in my proposal was use that same technique. So she thought it was a demo for the just to go on YouTube. But one of the questions I put in there was, "Would you marry me?" Um, and ironically, that was her first question. So yeah, it was just so weird. So what I had to do was continue as if we're still just answering the questions or whatever the case is. So at the end of that, though, and I just asked her, "Hey, so what was your best question, or what was your favorite question?" So that's how I was able to propose. So when she said, "Of course, my favorite question was the one when you asked me to marry you," so I was like, "Well, would you?" Like, so I pulled the ring out, and yeah, but it's all on my
What?
YouTube, Mental Health. Yeah.
Dope. Dope. I mean, if that ain't a selling point, I don't know what is. I love that,
Yeah,
James.
man.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.
It's-
Thank you. I
you
appreciate
have,
that.
I mean, you have a lot of amazing tools. You are impacting your community in a lot of ways, beautiful ways, and you just continue to expand. And I love it, and I love seeing it, and I want to, continue following your journey and seeing you through that. My last thing before I let you go, because I feel like there's so much here to unpack. But I always love to leave folks with just, what does a daily routine of wellness? And since your journey, there's been so much. Your tools that you offer in the wellness space are so impactful. What of all of that do you utilize, or what do you do for a typical day to balance out that mental, physical, spiritual, and or on a daily basis?
Yeah, so for me, I do a lot of exercise. I run often, couple miles, and what I started doing maybe 10 years ago or so is trying to get a 5K in as many countries as I can. So right now, my list is up to 20. So I have 20
Ooh.
countries in which I did at least a 5K in. So of course that's one way, but I also do kickboxing. I've been kickboxing for about a decade now. 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, I was going to enter to do my first fight, but of course the pandemic happened, so I took that as a sign. So so now it's just it's just me training to ensure that I'm healthy and just overall that. But I would
Yeah.
have liked to have fought, but yeah, I view the pandemic as a sign, like, nah, don't get in that ring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I still spar with, of course, the people in my gym and do it now just for overall fitness reasons. But something else I do is interact with my family. Man, I like to
Mm.
annoy my two daughters. One is 16, one is 11. Hang with the wife. Just do a lot of self care in that regard.
Yeah.
So I'm low key, man. Like my life is low stress. Family is good and healthy and whole, so I don't really have any issues. But I stay out the way. I just try to ensure that other people are seeing this healthy example.
I love it. I love it. And I feel the low stress, and I feel, your service is probably one of the biggest things that is
Yeah,
just inherent in your routine that you don't even consider routine, because I mean you're like, for me, you're like this beacon of wellness, in how you go about these tools and your work and your efforts and your journey, and even speaking about how you annoy your daughters. I know that you mean that out of love in the best way possible, and I could just feel that, as a
yeah.
fellow
So
girl dad.
yeah, as a parent, you think you're doing things that are cool, but to them, it's like, Dad, what are you doing? You know what I'm
What
saying?
do you? Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I mean by annoying. Like, to me, it's all good, but to them, it's like, yo, we don't, we don't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I mean by annoying. Yeah, not not
Yeah.
not literally picking them or poking them or nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
I love it. I love it, James. This has been a great conversation, and I hope folks pick up some of the things you've been putting out there in this conversation, and the tools for that matter. And is there anything else? I mean, you've dropped plenty, but is there anything else you'd love to tell the good people that you're working on, that's coming out, or just
yeah.
to emphasize?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I think one of the things that people can do too is ignore the perception of others. And,
Mm,
this is not specifically the men, but of course women as well. Everybody who's in that mind state of other people's opinion matter. Now, ignore
yeah.
the perception of others. Do what's best for you in those situations, whether it's working on yourself, getting help. Don't let those stigmas affect you based on the other people's opinion. And if you need any other resources or got questions or something that you heard here, or just want the tools that I provide, then of course you can go to my website, www.mentoheal.com, www.mentoheal.com. And of course, that will lead you to my social media. You can subscribe to my YouTube. You can purchase the book. You can purchase the shirt. You can purchase
The
the
hat.
board game.
The
Yeah, the
hat.
hat, everything. Yeah.
Are you rocking
So
right now? Yeah.
yep. And also on my website, mentor.com, is a resource list. If you are in
Mm,
a different geographical location, you can find a therapist, find a therapist of color, a therapist, just you can put one together basically.
mm.
And or if you're homeless or suicide, it's so many different resources on my website that can benefit that you can benefit from. And of course, there's a speaker request form on my website too for the people who want to continue to book me to come and do presentations and or trainings, diversity, equity, inclusion, trauma, mental health, all those different things.
I love it, James. I love it. Thank you again so much for this conversation. You are, again, beacon of wellness and resources. And I love it. Good people. Make sure you connect with James on the socials, the YouTube, his website, as he mentioned. There's so much, there's so much there, and so many resources for you. And yeah, James Harris, thank you, sir. Once again, that this has been amazing. And listeners, viewers, don't forget to tell another brother, king, or queen about man to man, so we can keep the wellness revolution moving forward, just like we did today. Plus, if you're liking what you're hearing, give us those 5 stars, leave us a dope review. If you want to hear somebody like James, hit me up on Instagram at Wasicki, Wasicki. Till next week, peace, love, and education.